This is your Sports Boys, and today we'll be talking about the signing of Omer Yurtseven to the Utah Jazz. Okay, so free agent Omer Yurtseven has signed a $2.8 million contract to the Utah Jazz. How does this impact the Utah Jazz, and is it the backup center that they're looking for? Coming up next on your Sports Boys. Okay, so starting off with Omer Yurtseven. So he's kind of interesting signing by the Utah Jazz. I think he's probably gonna play that similar role that Paul Reed would have. Paul Reed was probably also a potential, like, if they were gonna make a trade, he could have helped with that because of the contract. But I think that now that we got Omer Yurtseven instead of Paul Reed, I think he'll have similar minutes, maybe like 10 minutes a game, maybe 20. So he won't get too many minutes, but for a backup center, he'll come in and be pretty solid. I thought this was kind of interesting because of the fact that they had Micah Potter and a few other players that could potentially play center. But I think it's good because if Micah Potter isn't performing, then Omar can play and vice versa. So that's my take. I think it's a pretty good signing by the Utah Jazz, and it'll definitely help for their backup center if that's what they plan to do with him, or if they plan to put him in a trade. He probably has quite a bit of value being that age, so I think pretty solid signing by the Utah Jazz. Okay, and then talking about some of the other young players that are definitely going to help the Utah Jazz, we got Keontae George, who in the Summer League has been remarkable, has been probably the best player in the Summer League until he got injured. I don't think that injury is going to be too much of a big deal. I think Keontae George could probably play the starting point guard. That might be a hot take, but I think he can play the starting point guard from what I've seen. He can pass, he can defend, he's proved that he can score points. He can basically do it all, and he's just a rookie, so imagine what he can do once he starts to develop a little bit. So I think they either give him a lot of minutes off the bench or they start him. I'm assuming they'll probably start him, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think that they have a really solid team this year with all the young people that we're going to be talking about, that they might be able to be a contender for the playoffs and maybe even something else. I don't know. We'll have to see. So, and then another young player that has already proved to be great is Walker Kessler. He's proved that he can be a great defensive player. He was a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, and I'm not sure what's stopping him from being Defensive Player of the Year this year. Like, that's my take. I think he'll be Defensive Player of the Year. The only person standing in his way, I think, is Jaren Jackson Jr. He is a great defensive player, though. So, anyways, I think another great player that's going to step up is probably Taylor Hendricks, who hasn't played in the Summer League, and obviously he's not going to play in the Summer League, but I think he'll prove himself during the NBA season, where he'll probably be backup power forward, getting probably like 20 minutes a game, which is pretty solid for a rookie, and then he'll have to prove himself like that, as I think Keontae's proved a little bit more as of now, but I guess the NBA season determines more than everything else, so I guess we'll just have to see when the season comes around. But anyways, we got even Taylor Horton-Tucker, still young. Last year he showed a lot of potential. He showed that he could be the point guard that we need. If we really need him, he can step up and be the point guard. And I think he did show that. He did prove that he can handle. I don't think I would want him to play the point guard. I think shooting guard or small forward somewhere is more his position, but he showed that he can step up and play the point guard. And then another young player that we acquired was Bryce Sensabaugh. Also hasn't played in the Summer League. He did have a knee injury, which is kind of concerning, but it doesn't sound like it was too severe, so I'm not too concerned about it. But it is a scary injury sometimes, so. But anyways, it's probably not severe if the Utah Jazz selected him at the 28th pick. But Gigi Jackson has showed a lot of potential. So he's an interesting person that I want to talk about because I think that they probably should have selected him with the 28th pick, but also you can't really tell because Bryce Sensabaugh hasn't played a single Summer League game. But also, I mean, Gigi Jackson in the Summer League, I've seen moves he's done as far as like scoring goes inside. That it looks amazing, like Donovan Mitchell or something. Like that's a lot. Like Donovan Mitchell is great, and some of those moves I saw, that's kind of what it looked like. Like some of Gigi Jackson's moves kind of looked like Donovan Mitchell or someone who attacks the rim really hard, like Russell Westbrook or something. I don't think he's as good as maybe someone like Scoot Henderson, who's kind of that same way, that's got that Donovan Mitchell type attack and Russell Westbrook type attack. And so I think Gigi Jackson, we probably missed on him with the 28th pick, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Just from what I saw of him in the Summer League, I think we kind of messed up on that, but we'd have to see. I mean, Bryce Sensabaugh obviously hasn't played a game yet, so it'll kind of also be determined during the season. But anyways, that's just my take. I think we might have missed out on Gigi a little bit. But then another young player that we acquired, being John Collins, he can slide in and be that starting power forward. He'll help Kelly Olynyk out a lot, and I think Kelly could be there on the backup power forward, but I'm actually not sure what their plans are with him, considering the fact that, I mean, Taylor Hendricks will probably be backup power forward. So Kelly Olynyk will be an interesting player, and I think that they'll still find a way to get him minutes because obviously he showed that he can help the team move the ball around and stuff. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think Kelly Olynyk will still get the minutes he deserves, even with Taylor Hendricks, whether he starts playing small forward or a different position. He can probably even slide into the center if we need, like I said, if either Micah Potter's not performing or our new addition isn't performing quite right, then I think that Kelly Olynyk could slide into the center place. He does have things that I think will help him at center. He's a pretty solid defender. I think just the ball movement will help. I think he could be really solid at the center. So if they decide to just put him at the backup center, and then they give Micah Potter a chance, and also I keep forgetting his name for some reason, but also Omer Yurtseven a chance. So I think that the Utah Jazz have a really solid young core. Another person that could probably be noted is, let's see, so let's pull up Utah Jazz. Players. And then another player that I'm forgetting about for some reason is Colin Sexton. So he will be returning from his injury, and I think he'll come in and he could probably potentially take the point guard role away from Keontae George, but I don't think so. I think it'll kind of just be depending on how Keontae performs, then Colin Sexton will play. But I think that Keontae George has proved a lot, so he might be able to be the starting point guard rather than Colin Sexton. And Colin Sexton could come off the bench, and then Taylor could play the shooting guard, which would be ideal, like I said, because, I mean, no disrespect to Taylor Horton, but he's kind of a ball hog type player, not great as a point guard because point guards are supposed to be able to pass. Keontae George, I think, is way more of a point guard than Taylor Horton is, but Taylor Horton did prove some things last season that I thought were pretty great, so I don't know. No disrespect to Taylor or anything, because he's a great player, and he's proved that as well. And then another player that can be noted is, I mean, I'm not sure if we talked about Lauri Markkanen yet, but obviously, he's great. He's an all-star. He was last year, and I see him being an all-star again this year. So, obviously we got the all-star Lauri Markkanen jersey on. Got to rep Lauri Markkanen, great player. Um, Obviously he's proved everything he needs to. Um, Being an all-star, great player, he can do it all. And being 7 feet tall, if you can do it all, yep, you got your spot in the NBA. Alrighty, so then another player. So Lucas Salmonich is really interesting. So if they don't waive him by the end of the day, then he has a guaranteed $400,000 or 400K contract. So today's gonna show kind of a lot if Lucas Salmonich is on the squad, and probably a few other players could get waived today, or I don't know. And then Chris Dunn, I talked about him a little bit, but I actually love him as a point guard. He plays great defense. He's kind of almost like a Keontae George type player. He can score, he can defend. That's what I like about him. He can defend, and he will not give up. And so I think he could be backup point guard there too. So they have so much potential. Their depth is unreal. And all these players that I'm talking about are young too. Like, there's not a single player on their team really that's old anymore. So, and then another person that I have to talk about, this guy is forgotten a lot, but he's proved a lot last year. We got Simone Fontecchio. He showed that he can hit the three ball. He showed that if he needs to, he can make plays. So he's obviously going to be probably backup small forward. But just what I'm thinking about is the depth of the Utah Jazz is unreal. Like, the depth, there's no way they're going to run out of players. Like, one person gets injured or they're not performing right, we have other options. That's what I love about this Utah Jazz squad. And then another probably pretty notable player being so Joey Hauser's interesting too. So I think they're going to have to make the decision between Lucas Salmonich and Joey Hauser. I don't think they're both going to stay. Maybe even they're going to have to make the decision about Micah Potter, but I really hope they sign Micah Potter. And I kind of hope they sign Lucas Salmonich. I'm kind of curious about if Lucas Salmonich is better or if Micah Potter is better. I really have no clue. But yeah, I think that's basically what I wanted to get at, is that how great this young core is, and basically the whole team is young, and just the depth is unreal. I keep saying that, but it's so true. So just watch out for the Jazz this season. They're going to be great. And then obviously this isn't a young player, but Jordan Clarkson, he just really puts this team together. I mean, he's not the most consistent player. That's the only concern about Jordan Clarkson. But either way, he supplied with 20 points last year and even a few assists when he needed to. He's not the greatest passer, so he's probably not the greatest point guard either. But I don't know. I think if we needed him to play point guard or anything, he could do it. But anyways, I just think that this Utah Jazz team is probably a contender with all the young people that they've added. And so when I first heard about the Donovan and the Rudy trades, I was devastated as a Jazz fan. And then they kind of put this team together, starting off with just Lauri Markkanen and then Kessler, and it really got me hyped for the season. And, well, not for the season, because at first I was like, this is going to be a terrible season. No one's going to be good. Even though I've always liked Lauri Markkanen, but I've never seen him as an all-star until this year, because he's never proved to be. But then all these young players just started proving to be great. Obviously losing Colin Sexton wasn't amazing at all, but it was awesome seeing this team form, this really solid team last year, and it's they were doing so good last year, and then obviously they kind of tried to tank a little bit to get a better pick, which I don't think they tanked enough, but at the same time, now they built this team with John Collins, Colin Sexton coming back. They got Keontae George, they got Taylor Hendricks, they got Simone Fontecchio. They got all these people I've mentioned. They got Bryce Sensabaugh. And Bryce Sensabaugh was apparently one of the best shooters in the draft. And I think I mean, the Utah Jazz do have a lot of great shooting, but I think that'll help. Keontae George has proved to be a great shooter. Simone Fontecchio, great shooter. Like, I just can't wait to see this season because all the moves that the Utah Jazz have made in the offseason have been great. Their draft, I mean, the draft hasn't really proven much yet except for Keontae George, but I'm sure the other two will be helpful as well. And then just the players that they've signed. Of course, the one being, why do I keep forgetting his name? Omer Yurtseven. Um, that's a pretty solid signing. Collins being a great trade. And yeah, I think that's about it. Just kind of wanted to get on here and talk about all the offseason moves and the depth of the Utah Jazz. Also, some great young stars that the Utah Jazz have. And then the addition of Omer Yurtseven, obviously, which I think, I'm not super high on this deal, but it'll be good if we really need him to come in at center. I think he's going to be really solid. Obviously, he showed that he can score. Obviously, he's not going to have too big of a role, but he showed that he can score and that he can play a little bit of defense when he was on the Heat. Also, I want to bring up the fact that he does have a very interesting nickname. Let's see if I can find this. I don't exactly remember. Turk Nowitzki. That's an awesome nickname. Can't wait to see him on the court and see how he performs, along with Keontae and all those other players. Can't wait to see how they actually perform during the season. But I'm really hyped for the season. I can't wait, especially if they make any more moves. And I really hope they sign Lucas Samanic or they don't waive him by the end of the day, because if they don't waive him, then he's on the team. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's probably going to wrap up this podcast today. Probably get on if anything else crazy happens with the Jazz. And as always, this is your Sports Boys. Over and out.